Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending upon your time zone. Welcome to the webinar on Eliminate Duplicates with Duplicate Management in Salesforce. Let's get started. Well, the agenda for the day is we will have a short introduction, and then we will look into current solutions, and then let's get introduced to the duplicate management, the new feature that was introduced by Salesforce, then some concepts about the duplicate management, and then we will have an exposure to creating and editing rules, a deep dive into what exactly are the matching rules, the limitations, and finally the resources. All right, so get started. The first thing is introduction. It goes without saying, duplicates is a very trivial problem, a data inconsistency problem, and something which is not just to the Salesforce world, but anything, any software or any application that deals with huge amounts of data. The duplicates is one problem that you need to mitigate, and in order to ensure that you have the right set of data with you. And also, you can imagine how the duplicates would affect the business. Imagine that you have a lot of duplicate leads coming into your system, into your Salesforce, and your sales or marketing users are basically, without knowing that it's a duplicate, they are going at with the business. And you can imagine the way it would affect your business. And the duplicate is one problem that's not really easy to solve. And like any other problems, there are many things that you need to keep in mind in order to remove the problem of duplicates completely. So, for example, say you want to find duplicates in leads, and for example, say you have two leads, one which are basically the same lead, but they happen to be different, where they are basically differing on the company. And the first lead, yeah, and where the company was Intel Corp, and then you have a next lead where the company name was just Intel. So the first one, you had a word that said corporation, short for corp, and then the second one, you just had Intel. But if you had both a system, you would need to even look into such forms where even though there are additional words, they are still belonging to the same company. So you need to consider factors, such factors, take into action normalization techniques, and a lot of things that you need to do, that you need to perform in order to solve this problem efficiently. And also the complexity varies across business domains. It's not just your sales objects like your leads, opportunities, accounts, and contacts. Imagine that you are into an institution. You need to block duplicates across candidates, or you are into maybe another domain. So in other words, you need to implement duplicate management across different types of objects, just not your leads, contacts, or opportunities, but it may also span into other custom objects or maybe other standard objects. And finally, you can imagine the cost that would have to be spent by the companies in order to implement such solutions. Imagine you are developing an Apex trigger or some sort of custom development involving Apex. You have to hire a developer, or you are installing a third-party app. You have to pay for the licenses, the app. So there are a lot of costs that comes in, and that you need to that you're bound to in order to mitigate the problem of duplicates. So let's look into the current solutions. The first one is the app exchange packages. So these are the dupe catcher, the dupe blocker, clouding. Or I cannot resist from saying that these apps are one of the best out there in the industry that does this job pretty well. They are efficient enough to manage duplicates within your Salesforce, capable enough to handle custom and standard objects. But you can imagine the cost that's pertained to using these apps. And of course, if you're not going through an app, but you need to build a custom solution, the next step is to hire a developer and set up Apex triggers to manage or mitigate this problem. But you can imagine how that would scale or how that would increase with time. Imagine you set up an Apex trigger on the lead object to track and monitor duplicates, and the next day the marketing, the business comes in and says we need this to be implemented on the opportunity or maybe on the account. So you would still have to go to the developer to set this up for your account, opportunity, or other custom or standard objects as per the business request. So you can imagine the maintenance and the cost that's involved in doing this. So here is where the duplicate management comes in, the out-of-the-box offering from Salesforce. That's called duplicate management. So let's see, let's get into duplicate management. So this one was beta in spring 15 and it has become generally available with the summer 15. It's native out-of-the-box offering. It's very well built. It goes without saying that it's very real time, very intuitive and user friendly to set up and manage. And one of the best things is that it's available from the professional edition and above. So I was expecting this to be only from the enterprise, but that's a great effort and great step from the Salesforce side. Salesforce.com has actually introduced this from the professional edition and above. And one of the other misconceptions out there is that if I need to use duplicate management, do I need to buy data.com licenses? But it's very important to note that no, you don't have to buy data.com licenses. It just uses the data.com technology to find and spot duplicates. You don't have to buy or purchase data.com licenses to use duplicate management. That's very important. And as of today, this is only supported for lead, account, and contact. These are the only three standard Sales Cloud objects that are supported. Um, and of course, the custom objects. The other objects like opportunities or person accounts are not supported for now. And as far as I've seen, I have found that duplicate management pretty intuitive and easy to set up, and it goes without saying it's real time. So, the user feeds in a lead, and if the lead happens to be a duplicate, he or she is presented with the set of duplicates right away, and he or she cannot proceed without, solving. So now let's dive further into duplicate management. Let's go into the concepts of duplicate management. So duplicate management, it is composed of two components, two integral components. That's the matching rule and the duplicate rule. These are the two things that the duplicate management is composed of and forms the heart of the duplicate management system. Now, what exactly is a matching rule? So, matching rule is where you specify the fields that needs to be looked for. So, for example, say you are setting up a matching rule for the lead object. You can specify the fields that the duplicate management system needs to look for when it is comparing the new lead with the others already in the system. So you would say in your matching rule, first name, last name, and company, or maybe first name, last name, and email. So within the matching rule, you specify the fields that needs to be looked for and that needs to be compared with the other leads in your system while looking for duplicates. Now, default to matching rules. So once when you turn on a duplicate management system, Salesforce provides out-of-the-box matching rules for the standard objects. So like I mentioned before, the standard objects that are supported are lead, account, and contact. So when you turn the duplicate management on, Salesforce by default provides you with the three matching rules for the respective objects. That is one for lead, the one for contact, and one for account. So these are something that's offered out of the box default, the matching rules that's offered. But Salesforce actually recommends you to use these out of the box matching rules. Of course, you can create your own custom matching rules, but when it comes to lead, account, or contact, you have an option to select the matching rules that's provided by Salesforce. Now, the reason why they say so is because they claim that it's set up in the most efficient manner. The matching rule has been carefully designed, so they prefer you to use the matching rules. But of course, you can use your own set of custom matching rules for lead or contact or account. Now, the next thing is your duplicate rule. So duplicate rule. So if you're familiar with setting up of workflow rules, the first thing that you do when you're setting up a workflow rule is you specify the object and you specify your criteria. So setting up of a matching rule is pretty much similar to that. You specify the fields that needs to be looked for. Now, the next thing when you're doing a workflow rule is you set up an immediate action that needs to be performed. That could be an email alert or maybe a task or perform a field update. So that's pretty much what a duplicate rule also looks like. You set up a matching rule as the first thing. The second thing that you need to do is to set up a duplicate rule. So the duplicate rule is where you specify the action that needs to be performed when a match is found, when a duplicate is found. Should we allow it or should we block it? So these are the two different options that you can see on the duplicate rule. Shall we allow or block? The two modes of operation that's available for the duplicate rule. So the block means when you set it to block, you can see that you will notice that the users cannot save the lead or the record. The users cannot save the record without making changes. If it's flagged as a duplicate, they cannot save it without making changes. Like, for example, say you have a lead already in the system that is named as John as the first name and Doe as the last name, and if the user is trying to enter another lead record with the John and Doe as the first and last name, he will be caught right then. He will not be able to save the lead record unless until he makes changes to the first name or the last name saying that it's not a duplicate, right? So the block option would stop the user from saving the record. While when you set it to allow option, the users has an option here. They can just neglect the warning and save the lead record. So that's the allow option. So irrespective of the option that you set to, even if you set to allow or even if you set to block, the users are always presented with the list of possible duplicates, right? So they are presented with two things, a list of possible duplicates and a warning message. So irrespective of the action, even if it's allow or even if it's block, they are always presented with the list of possible duplicates and a warning message, which the administrator can set up. Now with the allow option, the users can always just neglect the warning and save the record. So another option, another bonus that you get with the allow option is that you can run out of the box reports. Now how is this going to be possible? You set it to allow. If the user just skips the warnings, how can you actually get reports? So we look into how is the concept of reports made possible when you set it to allow option in the next slide. So that's pretty much what the matching rule and duplicate rule. The matching rule is where you specify the fields that needs to be looked for, and duplicate rule in simple words is the action that needs to be performed. Should that be an allow or should that be a block? So the next thing in the concepts section is the duplicate record sets and duplicate record items. So this is where, the allow option comes into play, comes into life. So you set the option to allow, and the moment he or she saves the lead or skips the warning and saves the lead, what happens is the lead still goes into the lead object, but a new record is created under the duplicate record item object. So the duplicate record item and duplicate record set are two new objects that are introduced or that gets added to your org when you turn on duplicate management. Right? So the moment the user skips the warning, the moment he or she skips the warning and saves the lead record, at the same time, a new record is created into the duplicate record item object. Right? So the duplicate record items, in other words, is basically a container or it's a bucket, another object which holds the list of duplicates that the users created by neglecting the warning, right? Now that's duplicate record item. Now what is this duplicate record set? So just with the duplicate record item, which is just saving the reference to the lead or the account or contact object that was saved, just with that reference, you do not know which duplicate matching rule was responsible for flagging this lead or this record as a duplicate. So that's where duplicate record set comes into play. The duplicate record set saves the reference to the matching rule that was responsible for finding or flagging the record as duplicate, while the duplicate record item saves the individual lead record, or I shouldn't say it saves the lead record, instead it saves a reference to the lead or contact or account or that custom object record that was flagged as duplicate, right? So this is where the best part about these two objects is that you can set up your own reports, your workflow rules, or maybe triggers or validation rules on top of these objects. So Salesforce has opened up access to that. You can set up reports. So setting up reports on these objects, which is your duplicate record items, you would know which were the duplicate leads or which were the duplicate accounts or which were the duplicate records that were created. So this is where the allow option comes to play. You set it to allow option, the users can still save the record, but at the same time, a new record is created under the duplicate record item object saying that, hey, a lead record with so-and-so details were saved. So that's with duplicate record set and duplicate record items. The next important thing is the error logs. Now, you would imagine, you would think what kind of errors that might happen. So since everything is managed by the platform itself, what are the possibilities for errors that might come in? Yes. So one such errors that might happen is the fuzzy matching engine is not available. But let me make it clear that these are very, very rare. These really don't happen, but still Salesforce has taken that extra step to create another object called error logs, which would save errors that might happen, right? So there could be instances that the fuzzy matching engine is not available, so the duplicate management could not, the duplicate check could not be performed, or the duplicate record sets or your duplicate record items could not be saved because there wasn't enough permissions to do that. So these are very, very rare. The error which says fuzzy matching engine not available hardly occurs, but if it occurs, you need to go into the error logs. Like if you suspect that that was a lead, okay, I have created a lead record, but the duplicate management didn't actually capture it. So the first thing that you need to do is go into error logs and see if there are any errors that might have happened. Right. So that's pretty much with your duplicate management concepts. So now you can see how would the error be presented to the end users when there is a duplicate. So right on the screen, you can see that the user tried to save a lead with the name Mark Benioff, and he or she was stopped right away, saying that there are a list of lead records and so many lists of contact records where is already available in the system. So you need to reconsider. So you can see that a list of leads and list of contacts have been presented to the user. At the max, you can only see 5 records, but you can always use the show all option to see the further list. And it's the first thing that on the top, the words in red, you have 8 possible duplicate records found. So this is a system generated message. But the next line, what you're seeing on the next line, you are creating a duplicate record. That line, the line that starts with those words, are basically an alert or message that the administrators can configure. So the error message comes in 2 lines. The first line is the system generated error message, while the second line is basically a message which the administrators can configure for the end users. Now, the next question that comes to your mind is, how can I configure the fields that's visible on the list that's shown above? So the fields there, you can show up to a maximum of 7 fields, and mostly the fields that's involved in your matching rules are always included in the list that you see there. So this is how pretty intuitive and user-friendly for the users. They can always, you can see that the lead name, the contact name has been represented as an hyperlink. They can always go into that lead record and see further details. So I would say that it's they have presented the information in the most intuitive manner for the users to know that the lead or the contact was a duplicate, right? So now let's get into my Salesforce org and let's try out creating a duplicate a rule and a matching rule for one of my custom objects. So here I have a custom object called employees, and I would need to set up a duplicate rule for my employees object. So the first thing is you need to go into the setup menu, and you would see that data.com administration is the menu that you need to expand in order to set up your duplicate management. And there you have another sub menu that reads duplicate management. So this is where you're going to, right? So you have matching rules, you have duplicate rules, and we have the duplicate record sets and duplicate record items that we talked about, and the duplicate error logs, right? So let's go into matching rules. So I just mentioned that when you turn on duplicate management in your system, Salesforce provides 3 out-of-the-box matching rules for your standard Sales Cloud objects, which is your account, contact, and lead. These are 3 matching rules that Salesforce provides out of the box, which you can utilize for setting up duplicate management for your account, for your contacts, and for your lead. So it doesn't require you to use these, but these are, like what Salesforce says, are carefully designed, to capture and stop most of the duplicates. But you're always free to create your own rules and set it up for your objects. So the first thing that I would do is I would set up a matching rule. Here I am planning to set up a matching rule for my employees custom object. So on the employees object, I have just 3 fields. I have the first name, I have the last name and an email fields. Both of these are required fields, and then I have first name. So I'm planning to set up, let me set up a matching rule for my employee custom object. So I would go into data.com administration, and then I would expand duplicate management, and I would select matching rules. So the moment I hit matching rules, I'm presented with a list of out-of-the-box matching rules, but I'm not bothered about them. I need to set up another one for my custom object, that's employees. So I hit new rule. These steps are pretty much similar if you're familiar about setting up of workflow rules and things like that. The steps are very much similar to that. And you select, the first thing that you do is you select the object, you select employee. So I'm only seeing employee because this is a fresh dev org and I just have employee as my custom object. But if you have an org which has another other set of custom objects, you would see that here in this list. And from the perspective of standard objects, you just have account, contact, and lead. That's it. So let me go ahead and select employee, and then I click next. The next thing that you would do is to give a logical name for your matching rule. Let me name that as employee matching rule. The unique name is populated automatically. You should make it a practice to give a description about the rule so that it helps admins to know what it was created for. The next thing I would specify are the fields that the duplicate management system needs to look for when they are comparing employee records. So as I mentioned before, the matching rule is where you specify the fields that needs to be looked for. So I would say look into the first name, let that be okay, so here you can see a set of matching methods. So you can see the exact which is there on the top, and then you have different fuzzy matching methods. So these are different fuzzy matching methods. We will be discussing about these fuzzy matching methods. So let me select fuzzy first name. The next thing that you have to specify is whether should we consider blank fields or not. So I'm not checking that, just don't consider them. The next field that I would specify is the first name, and I would say fuzzy last name as the method. And that's pretty much with my matching criteria. That's all you need to specify. Now you can always add your filter logic. Say you want to say one or two, or maybe you can say one and two. So let's leave that as one and two. You can specify up to 10 additional criterias. The 10th one is the last one. And you can always specify complex filter logics. But for our case, we just have the first name, we just have the last name, and you specify the matching method, and that's pretty much with our employee object. So hit save, and the matching rule has been saved. So you can see that there is a summary of your matching criteria that you can see here. So that's your matching rule. Now let's go ahead and create a duplicate rule. So you have set up a matching rule where you have said, look for employees. And when you're looking for employees, just look into the first name and last name field. Now we haven't yet specified what should you do when a duplicate employee has been found. So that's where duplicate rules comes to play. You would create a new duplicate rule for your employee object. And the first thing that you have to do is to give it a name. Let's name that as employee duplicate rule. And the very important thing, this is a very important, the record level security. You have two options to specify. The first one says enforce sharing rules. The second one says bypass sharing rules. So, a user, maybe a low-level user, a standard user who doesn't have permissions to see the other lead records in this database, who just has permission to see his or her own lead records, right? So if that user is creating a lead record, the duplicate management system always needs to look into the set of other lead records in the system, irrespective of what he or she can actually see, right? So that's where the record level security comes into play. You have two options: enforce sharing rules. This means that even if the user is a standard user, and if he just has permissions to see his or her own records, and if you set into enforce sharing rules, that means that when the duplicate management is looking for duplicates, it would only look at lead records that's owned by the user, that's owned by the running user who is trying to create a duplicate. Now, the moment you set it to bypass sharing rules, it means that irrespective of the sharing settings, irrespective of the permissions that the user has, just don't look at what permissions he or she has. When you're checking for a duplicate, just scan the entire database. Just scan the entire database of lead records. Don't look at what permissions the user has. Just scan the entire database. So I would always set that into bypass sharing rules. So which means when a lead record is created, when a lead record is being created, the entire lead object, the entire database of lead will be looked for or scanned for to see if there is a duplicate. Now, the next is the action. So should this be on what should you do when a user is creating a fresh record? What should you do when the user is trying to edit an existing record? So these are the two options. So let me specify that as block. So you can see that the moment I set it to block, the options for alert and report just goes away. And then I set it to block for the second one too. And like I mentioned before, irrespective of the action that you specify, you always have an option to give a custom error message, a custom alert message for your end users. So let's just leave that as it is. The next thing is compare with employees. So this is very important. The out-of-the-box duplicate management system which Salesforce provides not only has the capability to compare with the existing with the same object, but you can even compare it with the existing contacts. Now, when you're specifying another object, you would need to specify a mapping. So you need to the duplicate management needs to know to which field on the contact should I be comparing the first name with. To which field on the contact should I be comparing the last name with? So this is a situation that comes in when you are trying to do cross-object comparisons. But let's stick with the same employees object for now, and let's select the matching rule that we created, which is the employee matching rule, right? So this is very good. You would see the summary of that matching rule right away when you select it. So the field mapping is automatically set for you. You don't have to worry about that when you are selecting a duplicate rule for the same object. You would have to specify the mapping only if you are trying to do a cross-object comparison. The next thing that you have to do is specifying conditions. This is not necessary for you to do, but you can do it, right? Imagine a use case or a requirement where the duplicate management or the duplicate rules should only run when the user alias or the user first name or maybe the profile is so and so. So such conditions can actually be added here. Maybe you are looking at the current users, maybe the current users department. If it happens to be marketing, then only run the the duplicate management. So such conditions that pertains to the running user or additional conditions can be specified in this section. But let's leave that as empty for now. And let's go ahead and create this um, duplicate row. So that's you can imagine here that was really easy. Setting up your matching rule and duplicate rule was done within a couple of minutes, fraction of seconds actually. So you can see a checkbox or good checkbox here which says the mapping is successful, it's all mapped and intact, but you see a warning here. Now why do you see this warning? This says that your account or employee matching rule hasn't been activated yet. So let's go ahead and activate the matching rule. We have activated, and it says that once when you activate the matching rule, it would send you a message when the activation has been successful. So we will explore why is this happening? Why would you see a message like this? Why is it not instantaneous? Why does it take a couple of minutes or maybe seconds for the system, for Salesforce to activate the matching rule? You would know the reason as we go on. So let's just think that it's activated. Now let's refresh the duplicate page, the duplicate record, and you would see a green mark appearing. So this means that everything is intact. The matching rule is activated. The mapping is perfect. Now the next thing that you got to do is activate your duplicate rule. So I have activated my duplicate rule. Now, you would be thinking that when I activated the matching rule, I got a message saying, it takes a couple of minutes or seconds for the matching rule to be activated. We'll send you a message shortly, but we didn't see that message right here. So we will learn, keep that in your mind. We will learn why it happened. So it didn't happen for duplicate rule, but it happened for the matching rules. We'll explore that in the coming slides. But so that's pretty much with our duplicate rule. We have set up the matching rule. We have set up the duplicate rule. So let's go ahead and create a new employee. Well, let's name that as John Doe and J Doe at Suyati.com. And let's save this. So this is the first employee record that I'm creating, and nothing happened. It was saved successfully. Now let's go in and create another employee with the same first name and last name and see how it behaves. John was the first name, last name is Doe, and this time it's jdoe at salesforce.com is the email. I hit save. Let's see what happens. There you go. You are blocked right away. It shows you the list of employees which are a possible duplicate. You can see that the employee ID is an hyperlink. You can always click that and go in and see the further details of the employee record. So that's pretty much with setting up the matching rule and duplicate rule. You might have seen by this time. It's very straightforward, pretty intuitive, and real-time and user-friendly to set it up and running. So back to our presentation. Right, so that was the demo. Now let's deep dive into matching rules. So you might have seen while I was setting up the matching rules, you didn't have a lot of options to configure. While setting up the matching rule, the only things that I specified was the field, a field equation, an equation that has the fields that needs to be looked for. That was pretty much that I need to do when I was setting up the matching rules. But behind the scenes, there are a lot of things that are happening. And when I was reading the release notes and then when I was trying out this thing live on my developer edition org, I was like, oh, so many things are not there in the screen, but a lot of things are mentioned in the release notes or in the guide. So this is because a lot of things is actually managed by the duplicate management behind the scenes. The end users, the administrators really do not need to know all this, but it's always good to know the behind the scenes, the additional things that's happening behind the scenes so that it helps you to build an efficient matching rule. So the three things that you might have seen while setting up the matching criteria was the field, the method, and the match blank fields, a checkbox at the end. But besides these three, there are another three things that you need to know about. There is something called the scoring method, then there is something called threshold, and then there is something called the matching key. So three new things that you have not seen on the screen, but that exists, right? So we will explore what are these three things used for, and let me make that clear. These three parameters, these three attributes are not shown to the end administrators or end users because it's automatically calculated by Salesforce. But it's always good to know so that it helps you to build an efficient matching criteria. So let's look into the different, each one of them one by one. The first thing is field. Let's look into what are the different types of fields that are supported. You have the email and per matching rule. In one matching rule, you can only specify one lookup field. It supports number field, it supports phone, and it supports pick list. So the pick list here refers to single pick list and not your multi-select pick list. It's the single select pick list. The next thing that you had to specify was the method. You have the exact matching, which requires you to have two lead records with the exact same data. In all respects, they match each other. Or you have a fuzzy as the method, which is a kind of a partial match. It need not be 100% match, maybe an 80% match, or maybe a 70% match. So fuzzy is the second method, and the fuzzy matching is made possible with the help of a lot of algorithms, which we'll see later. The next thing is the scoring method. So you were just seeing the field method and match blank fields, but the scoring method, the threshold and matching key are automatically derived or automatically calculated values with the administrators really need not see it. But as I said, it's good to know. Now the scoring method, there are basically four different scoring methods. You have the average, then there is something called maximum, then there is something called minimum, then there is something called weighted average. I'll explain what are these for. The next thing is the threshold. So like I mentioned, uh, the threshold and scoring method all comes into play if you have the method set as fuzzy. So if you have the method set as fuzzy, the duplicate management system would automatically set a threshold depending upon the algorithm and depending upon the method, depending upon the type of fuzzy method you have set. The platform, the duplicate management system would automatically set a threshold. So threshold is basically the minimum score that needs to be satisfied for the match, for the record to be flagged as a duplicate. So you could set of not we could set, but the platform, if the platform set the threshold as 80%, then you need to have a threshold of 85, 80 plus or more for that record to be flagged as a duplicate. The next thing is the match key. So match key is very important. Match key is the one that helps the duplicate management system. It's a kind of a key or a code that's appended with all the records and which the platform utilizes to retrieve the records faster, to retrieve the possible list of duplicates faster. It's synonymous to the process called indexing. Technically it's called indexing. Maybe for the admins or laymen, how would I explain that? So imagine that you have a book. The book has an index, right? So the index has basically the table of contents with the heading for each section and the page number. So if you would utilize an index page, you can directly reach onto the section or subtopic that you're looking for. So the index page or the table of contents is basically the key to help you to reach into the subsection or section faster. So match key can be thought of something synonymous to that. Salesforce utilizes match key to retrieve that list of possible duplicates faster. Now, it is due to this match key why the matching rule takes a while. While setting up a matching rule, if you specify the first name, the last name, and company as the fields to look for, the moment you activate the matching rule, what Salesforce does is Salesforce scans your entire lead database and it would append a match code, so a match key to each of the record. Now it's due to this process, it is due to this indexing process that's involved. It takes a while or maybe it takes a couple of seconds or minutes for the platform to finish activating the matching rule. So the moment you activate the matching rule, Salesforce scans the entire database of records and it appends a match key or a match code to each of the records so that Salesforce can utilize this match key to grab the list of possible duplicates while in action. Now let's deep dive into the matching methods out there. What are the different matching methods? So the first one is the exact, while the second one was the fuzzy. With fuzzy, you could see a list of options. There was the fuzzy first name, then there was this fuzzy last name, then there was this fuzzy company name, so on. So with exact, it is just one, but with fuzzy, you have different options. Now, why is Salesforce providing so many fuzzy options with last name and first name? Now, if you select the matching method as fuzzy first name, the threshold is set as 85. If you set as the fuzzy last name to fuzzy last name as the method, the threshold is 90. So these numbers, the 85 and 90, are automatically derived values. The administrators don't have to configure that. But like I mentioned, it's always good to know so that you know what's happening behind the scenes. Now then there is something called fuzzy company name where the threshold is 70. Now you can see that I've written with normalization. Now what is this with normalization? You know what, Salesforce does a lot of magic behind the scenes. Even if you created two records, if you created two lead records with the one with company name as Intel Corp and the second one with company name as just Intel, you know what, Salesforce scans the entire leads and Salesforce would get rid of the Corp, the words like corporation, the words like limited. It just gets rid of all of them, and it would normalize the lead records to just Intel, right? So that helps to that helps the duplicate management systems to flag records, even if they differ by these minor words like the corporation and the limited. So remember, the actual lead record doesn't get affected, but the duplicate management does all this in its memory or in its own area, or to ensure that the lead records are captured, even if there are slight differences like the words like the corporation or limited. Another thing is acronyms. If you happen to enter two lead record, one saying that one is in the expanded form where you wrote advanced micro devices, and on another lead record you just wrote AMD. So in that case, both of them looks unique, but it's in fact the duplicate. The other one is basically an expanded form of AMD. So Salesforce would look into such situations, such scenarios, and would normalize them to one single form, either the expanded form or either the shorthand form. The next one is the fuzzy font. So by itself, it might look very simple, just selecting fuzzy font, but you need to know that Salesforce has managed this pretty efficiently. The phone number is basically split into four different categories. There is the international code, then there is the area code, then there's the next three digits and the last four digits. Each of them has been specified with a score. So if the international code of the two records happens to match, they get a score of 10 right away. If the area code of the two records match, they get a score of 50. So weighted average means it would add them. 50 plus 10 is 60. You still haven't crossed the threshold. The next thing that would do is see if the next three digits of the phone numbers match. So that says 30. So that would total up to 90, which means that you have crossed the threshold of 80 and the record would be flagged right away. So it doesn't mean that your lead records or your custom object records should have the exact phone numbers, but even if a portion of the phone numbers, like maybe just the area code and next three digits, or maybe the combination of international code, area code, and the next three digits, if any of them matches and sums to a total of 80 and above, it's flagged as a duplicate. So this is very important to note. It's not just a mere exact checking, but a lot of effort and a lot of things are done behind the scenes to ensure that they are looking for duplicates efficiently. The next thing is fuzzy street, and you can see fuzzy street where it's the same thing. It's a score has been allotted for street name, then a score of 20 has been allotted for street number, the score of 15 has been allotted for street suffix, so on and so forth. So if any combination of these adds up to a score that's greater than 80%, then it's flagged as a duplicate. So same as that applies to fuzzy SIP. So these are some things which Salesforce manages by itself. The duplicate management system which manages by itself, but it's always good to know so that you can set up an efficient matching rule. The next thing which I've been talking since the beginning are the different algorithms that are being utilized to make fuzzy matching possible. So some of the algorithms, the first one is acronym, which is basically expanding, finding out shorthand notations and expanded notations and making them to a unique form. And then there's the edit distance algorithm where the threshold is calculated, the score is calculated depending upon the number of deletions, insertions, and character replacements that is done. So for example, say VP sales, and then there's something called VP of sales. So you get rid of O and F character replacements, O and F, you land into VP sales. So that's the edit distance algorithm. Then there is something called the initials, which is just the initial name, just the initials of the first name or last name. Then there is something called Jarrow-Winkler distance, which is again the number of character replacements Remember, this doesn't have deletions or insertions, but it's just character replacements. The Johnny becomes the Johnny with just when you get rid of one of the N. Then, so remember that when you select fuzzy first name, it's just not one algorithm that's used. It tries to use all the algorithms. The platform intelligently identifies the best set of algorithm that needs to be applied in order to calculate a threshold. It's very important. When you set it to fuzzy first name, the first thing that it tries is the exact matching. It would see if they are matching exactly. If they match exactly, then it wouldn't step into algorithms. But if they doesn't match exactly, it would start going into different algorithms, trying them out one by one to see if you get a threshold, if you get the expected threshold. The next one is the keyboard distance, where pretty much like your edit distance, but here the score is identified by the positions of the keys. Then you have something called the callback library distance, where it's the words that's in common that determines the score. Then you have finally the metaphone 3, which is where the score is calculated based on the sounds that are produced. So all these algorithms, some of them are proprietary algorithms, like just for your information, the metaphone 3 is a proprietary algorithm. If I remember, it was written by someone in the name Lawrence Phillips. He was the one who developed the Metaphone 3 algorithm, and the 3 is basically the version. But these are all for your the sake of information, which you really don't need to know while setting the matching rules. But Salesforce behind the scenes uses a lot of algorithms and different methods and steps to ensure that you are flagging the exact set of records, the correct set of records. So that's pretty much with your duplicate management. We talked about matching rules. We talked about the duplicate rule, and then we saw it live, and then we deep dive into matching rules, where we explored what are the scoring methods, what are the different algorithms, and how the matching criteria works. Now let's look into some of the limitations that's there for the duplicate management. The first one, like I mentioned at the beginning, you don't have standard objects like opportunities and person accounts. These standard objects are not supported. And of course, the duplicate management doesn't run on quick creates if you happen to use the quick create option. And if you create a record via the quick create, duplicate management doesn't run. Undeletes if you are restoring records from the recycle bin, then duplicate management do not run. Via exchange sync, you are sending in records from your Outlook or elsewhere, the duplicate don't run. If you are planning to merge records, say you're planning to merge a couple of account records, when you're merging records, duplicate management doesn't run. And when you have lead conversion, it doesn't run. But it's important to note that if you have the use Apex lead convert turned off, the duplicate management doesn't run. But if you have the Apex lead convert option turned on, the duplicate management does run. So which means when you're converting the lead and you have the use Apex lead convert turned on, and when you're converting the lead, the moment a new account, contact, and leads are, opportunity account and contacts are created, the duplicate management runs. And it's also important to note that the duplicate management applies to records that are already in Salesforce. So if you're consecutively, or if two users are simultaneously creating records, the lead record that's created by the other user on the other end are not considered. Only the lead records that are presently in the database are considered. And if you are inserting records via the API, you would of course not see the list of duplicates, but you would still be blocked. Even APIs are subject to duplicate management, but the caveat here is that you would not see the alert. You would not see the list of possible duplicates. It would just error out saying that it's a duplicate. You would not see the list of options, but it's still flagged. So that's pretty much with the duplicate management, and these are some of the resources that you can always make use of when you are diving into duplicate management. So thank you so much. Let me hand it over to Mukta.
Thank you, Deepak. It was a pleasure to have you on board. So, folks, it's time for the question and answer session. We are ready to address your question. You can type in your question using the question feature on the GoToWebinar. You can see the control panel on the right-hand side of the screen. So we have our first question for the day. Can you use the dupe management with the data loader? Does this generate a duplicate record set or items report or halt the batch upload?
Okay, so good question. So definitely duplicate management does work. Like I mentioned on the last slide where I said about limitations, duplicate management does block your records when you are importing them via data loader. But the only option, the only caveat that you have to remember is that you wouldn't see the list of duplicates. You would just be flagged out. You would just be stopped by saying that this is a duplicate. You would not see the list of duplicates. And you have a second question that says duplicate record set and items report. So you have to remember that the concept of duplicate record items, the concept of duplicate record set comes into life when you have the option set as allow. So if you have set it as allow, and if you're importing data via the duplicate, if you're importing data via data loader, of course the user will be allowed to create them, but simultaneously records will be created under your duplicate record items, saying that these are duplicates.
We have another question from Elaine which says, how does it work with what's already entered?
Well, like I mentioned, if two users are simultaneously creating records, of course, the other one is not considered, but all the records that's already there in the database, the records that already exist are, of course, considered while you are creating a record.
So that's all for today. Please look up for a follow-up mail that will alert you on the on-demand status of the webinar so that you can review any material that you have missed or you could simply go over again. So any further queries will be taken offline. You can reach us at our social media or you can simply drop us a mail at webinar@suyati.com. So that brings us to the end of our webinar. On behalf of Deepak and our team at Suyati Technologies, thanking you for joining us and taking your time to attend our webinar. Have a great day.